The night was restless. Rain hammered against the hospital windows, a steady rhythm that blended with the sirens outside and the hurried footsteps of nurses in the corridor. The emergency ward was chaos, yet Lily moved through it with calm precision. Her white coat trailed behind her, dark hair tied back, eyes sharp and focused on the young man seizing on the stretcher. Orders left her lips in clipped tones, and the team responded without hesitation. Emma stood at the edge of the scene, camera hanging around her neck, notebook tucked under her arm. She had been sent to capture the reality of the city's busiest hospital, not expecting to find herself trembling in the middle of a storm of panic and urgency. She lifted the camera, but as the lens focused on Lily's determined face, her breath caught. The way this woman worked, the quiet authority in her every movement, was magnetic. Emma lowered the camera, afraid to break the spell. When the patient stabilized, Lily stepped back, a faint flush on her cheeks, not from shyness, but from exhaustion. She removed her gloves, tossed them aside, and turned to grab a chart. In that moment, Emma shifted, but her heel caught the slick tile. She stumbled, heart jolting, and before she could fall, Lily's hand gripped her shoulder. Warmth shot through Emma like an electric current. For a second too long, they stared at one another. Lily's gaze softened from clinical focus to something more curious, almost questioning. "Careful," Lily said, her voice low but steady. Emma managed a laugh, shaky but sincere. "Guess I should be the one documenting, not becoming part of the chaos." The corner of Lily's mouth lifted before she turned back to her duties. But something lingered in that brief glance, a spark that neither of them could quite name. Later, when the ward had quieted for a moment, Lily found herself standing near the vending machine, sipping stale coffee, eyes heavy with fatigue. Emma approached, holding out a bottle of water. Their fingers brushed as the exchange happened, and Lily inhaled sharply, caught off guard by how natural it felt. Emma noticed the faint pink rising in her face and bit back a smile. "Thank you," Lily said softly, almost too soft for the noisy background. "You make this place look like a battlefield," Emma replied, gesturing with her camera. "But the way you lead, it's like watching someone command an orchestra." Lily chuckled, a rare sound in these halls. "An orchestra of chaos, maybe." Emma leaned against the wall, tilting her head, studying her. Still beautiful in its own way. The air between them grew heavier. Lily glanced away, unsure what to do with the weight pressing on her chest. She had spent years keeping her emotions tightly controlled, but this woman's presence unsettled her balance. Hours passed, the rain outside refusing to relent. By dawn, both women found themselves in the deserted cafeteria, the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. Emma sat across from Lily, scribbling notes, but her eyes strayed more often than her pen moved. Lily noticed. She felt the stare like a whisper against her skin. "You must see all sides of people," Emma said suddenly, closing her notebook. "Pain, relief, fear, hope. Doesn't it overwhelm you?" Lily paused before answering, her spoon swirling in untouched soup. "It overwhelms me when I stop to think about it. So I try not to. One case at a time. One life at a time." Emma's hand rested on the table, inches from Lily's. The distance was small, yet charged. Lily's gaze flickered down, then back to Emma's eyes. The intensity there unnerved her, but also pulled her closer in a way she couldn't resist. "Your work changes lives," Emma said softly. "You change lives." Lily opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. Instead, silence thickened, only broken by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant call of an intercom. They stayed like that, locked in an unspoken conversation, until Emma finally leaned back, forcing air between them. When their shift ended, Lily walked Emma toward the main doors. The rain had eased into a drizzle, the morning light pale through the clouds. As Emma turned to leave, their shoulders brushed, an innocent touch, but one that sent another ripple of awareness through both. Emma's smile was small yet knowing, the kind of smile that said, "I noticed it too." "Good night, Doctor," Emma murmured, though the sun was already rising. "Good night," Lily replied, watching her disappear through the glass doors, her chest tightening in a way she hadn't felt in years. All through the next week, Emma replayed that moment when Lily caught her from falling, the heat of her palm still imprinted on her shoulder. For Lily, it was the brush of fingers at the vending machine, the way Emma's eyes lingered just a second too long. These fragments returned in quiet moments, uninvited yet impossible to ignore. The second encounter came sooner than either expected. Emma returned to the hospital 2 nights later for follow-up shots. She found Lily again, bent over a chart at the nurse's station. Their eyes met, and for the briefest instant, the bustling world faded. No one else seemed to exist in that space. Emma raised her camera, intending to capture the controlled frenzy around Lily, but the lens betrayed her, focusing solely on the curve of her jaw, the determination etched in her brow. She lowered the camera quickly, flustered by her own betrayal. Lily noticed. She said nothing, only tilted her head slightly as if to ask a question she dared not voice. Emma turned away, cheeks warm, pretending to adjust her settings. By the end of her visit, they crossed paths again near the supply room. The hallway was narrow, the walls lined with carts and trays. Emma stepped aside to let Lily pass, but space was scarce. As Lily moved by, their arms brushed from shoulder to wrist. The touch lingered longer than it should have, deliberate in its slowness, though neither admitted to it. Both kept walking, hearts pounding, pretending nothing happened, yet fully aware that everything had. That night, Emma lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the photographs she had taken. Most were blurred, filled with frantic energy, but one stood out, Lily, adjusting her gloves, eyes downward, hair falling across her temple. It was not a picture of a doctor at work. It was a portrait of a woman, vulnerable, human, striking in her stillness. Emma traced the outline of her face with her finger, whispering to the dark, "Why do you feel so familiar?" Across town, Lily sat in her kitchen, her stethoscope still around her neck though the shift had ended hours ago. She sipped cold tea, unable to shake the memory of Emma's gaze. It was unlike any look she had received before, not the admiration of a patient, not the respect of colleagues, but something more dangerous, something more intimate. She told herself it was nothing, that attraction had no place in her world, but the flutter in her chest refused to obey reason. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emma's smile, subtle yet piercing. The storm outside had quieted, but inside both women a different storm was beginning, silent yet undeniable. They did not know it yet, but a line had been crossed in that hospital, invisible but unbreakable, pulling them toward a future neither had anticipated. When Emma returned a week later to deliver her article draft, Lily was waiting in the lobby, pretending to check her phone. Their eyes met again, and the world seemed to pause. Neither spoke at first, but the silence itself was charged, thick with all the unspoken things that had gathered since their first touch. "Coffee?" Emma asked finally, her voice tentative but hopeful. Lily hesitated, knowing the risk, yet the word slipped out before caution could catch it. Yes. That single word was the quiet ignition of something that would burn brighter than either of them could imagine. Their first coffee together stretched far beyond the limits of a casual meeting. The cafe was nearly empty, shadows spilling across wooden floors as the rain tapped softly against the windows. Lily and Emma sat across from one another, steam curling from their cups, but neither tasted the drink. Conversation drifted from harmless small talk into deeper waters, the kind of dialogue that left both of them leaning closer without noticing, pausing often as though silence itself carried meaning. From that evening on, their lives began to interweave in ways neither had planned. Lily started taking the long way home if it meant passing the bookstore where Emma sometimes lingered. Emma rearranged assignments so she could spend more time shadowing the hospital staff, camera ready yet often forgotten around her neck. Whenever they were together, the world shrank to a private sphere, every glance a secret message, every touch, whether by accident or design, a promise of something more. At first their bond was tentative, like two explorers moving cautiously through uncharted terrain. A brush of hands when Emma passed a chart, a lingering glance in the elevator that stretched until the doors opened and they parted wordlessly. Yet these fragments built into something undeniable. One night after a grueling shift, Lily found herself walking beside Emma through the quiet streets, city lights reflecting on puddles. Emma stopped, lifted her camera, and without asking snapped a picture of Lily with her coat unbuttoned, hair damp from mist, fatigue written across her face. Lily protested, embarrassed, but Emma only said, "I want to remember you exactly like this, raw and real." That was the first night they kissed. It was hesitant at first, almost clumsy, as though both were unsure if they had misread the other. But once their lips met, hesitation dissolved. The kiss deepened, hungry, urgent, and by the time they pulled apart, both were trembling from more than the chill in the air. From then on, secrecy became the silent rule. They crafted a hidden world, stitched together from late-night walks, hurried phone calls, and weekends stolen under the guise of work trips. In public, they were acquaintances, nothing more than a doctor and a journalist who had crossed paths. In private, they were something far stronger, bound by a passion that flared hotter with each secret rendezvous. Emma's apartment became their refuge. Its small living room with creaking floors and stacks of photographs pinned haphazardly to the walls felt like a sanctuary. There Lily could shed the armor of professionalism, could laugh freely without worrying who might hear. They cooked simple meals together, burning pasta more than once because kisses pulled them away from the stove. They spent hours lying on the worn couch, Emma's head resting on Lily's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of a heartbeat that felt safer than any lullaby. The intensity of their bond grew quickly, almost recklessly. Every parting felt unbearable, every reunion intoxicating. There were moments when Lily would arrive at the hospital still carrying the faint scent of Emma's perfume, jasmine, and something indefinable, and she would have to school her features into neutrality while colleagues spoke to her. Emma, for her part, often caught herself editing photographs while smiling absently at the memory of Lily's laugh, forcing herself to erase the distraction before anyone noticed. But love born in secrecy carries a double edge. The very act of hiding made every moment more precious yet also more precarious. They both knew discovery could change everything, yet neither could resist. One evening, Lily invited Emma to join her on a conference trip outside the city. They booked separate rooms, but after the day's sessions ended they slipped into one, closing the curtains tightly as if the darkness itself conspired with them. It was the first time they allowed themselves more than hurried embraces, the first time they could linger without fear of interruption. Emma photographed Lily lying on the hotel bed, hair loose, a rare smile on her lips, and Lily did not protest. She whispered instead, "Keep it, but only for you." That night, the walls around their hearts thinned further, and the idea of a shared future began to take root. 2 years passed in this hidden rhythm. They marked anniversaries in whispers, celebrated small victories with secret toasts, and held one another fiercely when the weight of silence grew heavy. Lily longed to bridge the distance between their world and the one outside. She wanted to tell her family, wanted to introduce Emma not as a friend, but as the woman she loved. The thought of unveiling their bond filled her with fear, but also hope. Emma, however, hesitated. Each time Lily brought up the possibility, Emma changed the subject or offered a fleeting smile that masked uncertainty. The cracks began subtly. A missed call here, a delayed response there. Emma still smiled, still kissed with the same intensity, but there was a shadow in her eyes, as though she carried a secret she could not share. Lily noticed, though she tried to dismiss it as stress. One night, as they sat in Emma's apartment, Lily reached into her bag and her fingers brushed against a small velvet box hidden deep within. She had been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the right moment, rehearsing words she could barely whisper aloud. She looked at Emma across the couch, the woman she adored, the woman she imagined growing old beside, and her chest swelled with love. But before she could speak, Emma turned away, gaze fixed on the dark window, expression unreadable. Lily's heart ached with questions she could not ask. She swallowed them, telling herself that patience would mend whatever distance had crept between them. Yet the unease only grew. In those days, the contrast between their private passion and the cracks appearing in Emma's resolve created an unbearable tension. They would share nights filled with closeness so deep it felt unbreakable. Then hours later Emma would grow quiet, her touch lingering yet distracted, her laughter dimmed. Lily sensed it, but clung harder, afraid that naming the problem would make it real. The climax came during an evening Lily had prepared with meticulous care. She made a reservation at an intimate restaurant, ordered Emma's favorite wine, even rehearsed what she would say when she finally slid the ring onto her finger. All day she carried the box in her purse, its weight both terrifying and exhilarating. As they sat across from each other in the candlelight, Lily could barely contain her nervous anticipation. Emma, however, seemed distracted, fingers circling the rim of her glass, eyes clouded by thoughts elsewhere. Lily tried to draw her into conversation, but Emma's responses were brief, her smiles fleeting. When Lily finally whispered, "You look beautiful tonight," Emma managed a small smile, yet it did not reach her eyes. The moment Lily had envisioned for months slipped further from reach, replaced by a growing dread she could no longer deny. As Emma lowered her gaze and breathed deeply, Lily's chest tightened with the sense that something irreversible was about to unfold. The passion that had once consumed them, the secrecy that had bound them, the love that had carried them through 2 years of hidden joy, all of it now hovered on the edge of collapse. Lily reached instinctively for Emma's hand, desperate to anchor her, but the distance was already there, intangible yet undeniable. That night was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter, the moment when secrecy gave way to openness, when fear yielded to courage. Instead, it became the turning point where love, once intoxicating and unstoppable, threatened to unravel under the weight of unspoken doubts. As Lily looked into Emma's troubled eyes, she realized the battle was no longer against the world outside. The struggle was within their own hearts, a fight between love and fear, between the desire for freedom and the terror of what that freedom might cost. The candlelight shimmered across the table, throwing fragile patterns on the white cloth and casting long shadows that seemed to breathe with every flicker. Lily could barely keep her hands from trembling under the table where the small velvet box waited, hidden, pressing against her palm like a secret too heavy to carry. She watched Emma swirl the stem of her glass, her eyes distant, her lips pressed together as though words sat just behind them, waiting to be released. Lily leaned forward, trying to close the gulf she felt widening between them. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. Emma looked up, eyes shimmering but not with joy. "There's something I need to tell you." Her voice wavered, not with uncertainty but with weight, as if she had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times. The restaurant around them carried on as though nothing was happening. Silverware clinked, laughter floated from nearby tables, the waiter passed with a polite smile. But to Lily, the world fell silent, every sound muffled as though she were underwater. Emma's hands fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, twisting it tighter, then releasing. She inhaled, closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again with a determination that made Lily's stomach twist. "I feel like I'm losing myself," she whispered, "like I've been swept into something so intense I can't find where I end and you begin. And I love you, I do, but it scares me. It feels like too much, like I can't breathe." Lily's mouth opened, but the words she had rehearsed, promises, declarations, vows, died in her throat. All she managed was a broken whisper. "So what are you saying?" Emma looked at her with tears brimming. "I think we need some time apart." The sentence shattered the fragile world Lily had been building. She gripped the velvet box harder under the table, feeling its edges cut into her palm. The words she had been preparing to say about forever and devotion dissolved into ash. She felt her chest tighten as though the walls themselves had closed in. "No," Lily murmured, shaking her head. "No, Emma, we can work through this. Whatever it is, whatever you're afraid of, I'll be here. We can slow down, we can talk, just don't do this." Emma's tears finally spilled over, but her gaze did not falter. You've given me everything, but I don't even know who I am anymore. I've been trying to mold myself into what I thought you wanted, and now I don't recognize my own reflection. I need to step away, to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be perfect for you. Lily's hand trembled as she reached across the table, capturing Emma's fingers. They were cold, trembling. You don't have to be perfect, Lily pleaded, voice rising. You never did. You're already enough. You always have been. Emma squeezed her hand once, then gently pulled free. The loss of contact felt like the final cut of a blade. Please, Emma whispered, don't make this harder than it already is. The night ended not with the proposal Lily had envisioned, not with a sparkling ring slipped onto a waiting finger, but with silence stretching between two women who loved each other yet stood on opposite sides of a chasm neither could cross. Back at her apartment, Lily sank into the couch with the unopened box still in her hand. She flipped it open just once, staring at the jewel inside, a cold brilliance that mocked the emptiness hollowing her chest. She imagined the moment she had planned, dropping to one knee, Emma's tears of joy, the embrace, the laughter, but those visions now felt cruel. Instead, the gem reflected back the faint light of her apartment, beautiful but useless, a symbol of love that had nowhere to go. That night she did not sleep. She sat by the window, watching headlights smear across the wet streets, replaying every moment of their years together. The first kiss in the rain, the laughter over burnt pasta, the stolen weekends when they pretended the world beyond them did not exist. Each memory cut deeper, yet she clung to them as though by replaying them she could stop them from slipping away. The next morning, her phone vibrated. A message from Emma. Lily's hands shook as she opened it. I'm still searching for who I am. Right now I can't give you what you deserve. One day, if I finally understand myself, maybe I'll find my way back to you. Until then, I hope you can live fully, even without me. Lily dropped the phone into her lap, unable to breathe. It was not a goodbye carved in stone, yet it carried the weight of an ending all the same. The words were gentle, but the meaning was merciless. Days blurred into nights. Lily buried herself in her work, taking double shifts, volunteering for cases no one wanted. The more she exhausted her body, the less room her mind had to wander back to Emma. But every quiet moment betrayed her, dragging her back to the sound of Emma's laughter, the smell of her perfume, the way her eyes had looked the first time they met across the chaos of the emergency ward. The ring remained tucked away, not returned, not sold, just hidden like a relic from a life that had been ripped away. Sometimes Lily took it out, held it in her palm, stared until her vision blurred. Other times she shoved it deep into the drawer, as though burying it could bury the ache as well. Neither worked. Weeks passed, then months. Friends noticed the change, but said little. Lily brushed off questions with practiced smiles, assuring them she was fine, though inside she felt hollow. At night she lay awake, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, half expecting her phone to light up again with another message, another sign. It never did. Emma's absence was a wound that refused to heal. Lily replayed their last dinner endlessly, searching for clues she had missed. Maybe she had been too eager, too insistent on a future Emma wasn't ready for. Maybe she had demanded too much without realizing. The guilt gnawed at her until she could barely stand to look at herself in the mirror. Yet beneath the grief, a small ember of hope refused to extinguish. The message had not said goodbye forever. It had spoken of searching, of returning someday. Lily clung to that fragile thread, even as logic told her it was foolish. 1 year passed. Seasons changed, hospital shifts came and went, new faces appeared, old ones moved on. Still, Lily carried the same ache. She tried to distract herself with work, with colleagues, with the steady rhythm of life, but at night the silence pressed harder, reminding her of everything she had lost. Emma, meanwhile, had disappeared from her world entirely. No photos, no calls, no chance encounters in familiar places. Lily sometimes wandered into the cafes they had frequented, half hoping, half dreading to see her. She never did. Until one afternoon, in a small coffee shop tucked on a quiet street, she turned and froze. Emma was there. Not alone. Sitting across from a man, laughing at something he said, though the laughter rang hollow even from a distance. The sight cut Lily to her core. She wanted to turn away, to run, but her feet rooted to the floor. The years of silence, the endless ache, the hope she had clung to, all of it collided in that instant. Emma looked up, and their eyes met. The world around them dissolved, leaving only the two of them suspended in a silence that screamed louder than any words. The coffee shop air smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, warm and inviting, yet for Lily it might as well have been suffocating smoke. She stood frozen at the entrance, heart pounding, eyes locked on the figure at the far corner. Emma. Her hair was shorter than Lily remembered, styled neatly, her clothes more polished, her posture straighter. Across from her sat a man with sandy hair and kind eyes, leaning forward as he spoke animatedly, his hand resting on the table as though it belonged there. For a moment Lily could not move. Time bent back on itself, dragging her through memories she had tried to bury. She saw Emma laughing in a dim apartment, photographs on the wall, jasmine on her skin. Then the vision was gone, replaced by this Emma, the one who had walked away, the one who had sent a message that tore Lily's heart open. Emma looked up. Their eyes collided. Surprise flared first, then something sharper, something Emma tried to hide by quickly glancing away. But it was too late. Recognition carried weight, and Lily felt it pressing on her chest, crushing her breath. The man turned, noticing the stranger lingering by the door. He smiled politely, unaware of the storm surging between the two women. Lily forced her legs to move, stepping closer as though drawn by an invisible thread. She reached their table, her pulse hammering, voice unsteady. Emma. Emma stiffened, her fingers tightening around her cup. Lily, she said, barely audible. The man glanced between them, curious. You know each other? Lily ignored him. Her eyes stayed fixed on Emma, searching for answers that had been denied for too long. So this is where you've been, she said, her words trembling with suppressed anger. Emma swallowed, unable to meet her gaze. This is Daniel, she murmured. We've been seeing each other. Daniel extended his hand with an awkward smile, oblivious to the undercurrent. Nice to meet you. Lily didn't take it. Her focus never wavered. Seeing each other, she repeated, her tone edged with disbelief. After everything you said about needing time, about finding yourself, this is what you chose? Emma flinched. Daniel's smile faltered, his hand retreating. Maybe I should give you 2 minutes, he said cautiously. No, Emma said quickly, shaking her head. Stay. Lily laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the cozy cafe. Of course. Stay. Because nothing says clarity like pretending with someone else while running from the truth. Emma's face tightened, her jaw clenching. Don't do this here. Why not? Lily shot back, her voice rising. You wanted space, you wanted to discover who you were, and now you sit here acting like you've solved it by forcing yourself into something you don't even believe. Daniel's brow furrowed, confusion settling into his features. Emma, he asked, unsure. Emma closed her eyes briefly, then turned back to Lily. You think you know me so well, but you don't. You only know the version of me that existed when we were together. I tried, Lily. I tried to build a life outside of us, because being with you felt like drowning sometimes. It was too much. Lily's voice cracked. Too much love? Too much honesty? Too much truth. Silence spread across the room. People at nearby tables had begun to notice, heads tilting, whispers floating in the background. Emma's hand shook as she reached for her cup, then set it down again untouched. I thought if I tried something different, Emma said slowly, her words heavy, if I convinced myself I could be happy with a man, maybe the ache would fade. Maybe I could silence the part of me that terrified me. Daniel froze, the color draining from his face. What are you saying? Emma turned toward him, tears glistening in her eyes. I'm saying I never stopped loving her. I wanted to change, I thought I could, but it was never real. Not with you. Not with anyone else. Lily felt her breath catch. Anger simmered beneath her ribs, but so did something fiercer roar. She stepped forward, closing the distance until she stood beside their table. Then stop pretending, she whispered, voice thick. Emma looked up at her, eyes wide, lips trembling. In that instant, the wall she had built over the past year cracked. Lily saw it, and the rush of emotion was unstoppable. Without thinking, without caring about the crowd or the man sitting stunned, she leaned down, cupped Emma's face, and kissed her. The cafe erupted. Gasps, murmurs, the scrape of chairs as people turned to watch. Daniel sat frozen, disbelief carved into his expression. But Lily didn't care. Emma didn't pull away. Instead, she rose from her seat and clutched Lily's arms as though afraid she might vanish again. The kiss deepened, desperate, consuming, every ounce of buried longing spilling out in that moment. When they broke apart, Emma pressed her forehead against Lily's, breathing hard. I tried to forget, she confessed, voice shaking. I tried to move on. But the second I saw you, it all came back. Every part of me still belongs to you. Daniel's chair scraped back sharply as he stood, his face pale with shock. So all this time, he stopped, words failing, then laughed bitterly. I was a placeholder. A distraction. Emma turned to him, guilt heavy in her gaze. I'm sorry, she whispered. Lily didn't flinch. She met his eyes, firm. She doesn't love you. She never did. Daniel shook his head, eyes filled with hurt. Then why even try? His voice cracked before he turned and left, the door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was louder than any noise. The cafe patrons watched in stunned fascination, some whispering, others staring openly. Lily ignored them all. She wrapped her arms around Emma, pulling her close, as though by holding her she could erase the year of absence, the sleepless nights, the endless waiting. Emma clung to her with equal desperation. I was so scared, she admitted, tears streaking her cheeks. Scared of what it meant to be with you, scared of what people would think, scared of losing myself. But the truth is, I was only lost without you. Lily kissed her hair, her temple, her jaw. We've wasted enough time, she murmured. No more running. No more pretending. Emma nodded, sobbing quietly, yet smiling through the tears. No more, she echoed. The crowd slowly dispersed, conversations resuming, though many eyes still lingered. But for the two women in the center, the world had narrowed once again to only them. The noise faded, the chaos dimmed, and all that remained was the certainty that had eluded them for too long. Later, as they stepped into the cool evening, the city lights blinking overhead, Emma held Lily's hand openly for the first time in public. People passed by, some glancing, some not noticing at all, but neither let go. The weight of secrecy that had once chained them was gone, replaced by a fragile but unshakable courage. Lily turned to her, eyes burning with a new fire. If you ever doubt again, if you ever wonder who you are, remember this. You're mine and I'm yours. That's all that matters. Emma squeezed her hand tightly, tears still shimmering but her smile radiant. Yes, she said firmly. That's all that matters. Their future was uncertain, challenges still looming, but in that moment they knew. The year of silence had ended in fire, in confrontation, in a kiss that stripped away every lie. What remained was unbreakable. And somewhere beyond the crowd, beyond the shock of strangers, beyond the hurt left behind, there was a vision forming, clearer than it had ever been before. A vision of white dresses, of vows, of a promise spoken not in secrecy, but before the world. For the first time in years, Lily allowed herself to believe it could happen. And Emma, standing by her side with her hand entwined, finally believed it too. The night after the cafe confrontation, they walked the streets together until the city emptied around them, until the lamplight stretched their shadows across cobblestone like two figures stitched into one. They spoke little, not because there was nothing to say, but because every silence carried a kind of healing. For the first time in years, they were no longer avoiding the truth, no longer twisting themselves into versions the world demanded. They were simply there, side by side, with their fingers laced together as though nothing else mattered. The weeks that followed were not easy. Emma carried guilt for the way she had tried to rewrite her heart, while Lily struggled to forgive the months of abandonment. Yet each day they worked at it. They learned how to speak openly without fear of rejection, how to sit with discomfort without running from it. When arguments flared, they stayed. When doubts crept in, they fought them together. Slowly, what had once been fragile became sturdy, and what had once been secret began to shine without apology. Emma introduced Lily to her closest friends first, the people she had been afraid to disappoint. To her surprise, there was no judgment in their eyes, only relief that she had stopped hiding. Lily did the same with her family, her voice steady as she said Emma's name at the dinner table. There were questions, there was hesitation, but there was also love, and that love grew louder than any fear. Time carried them forward, not in leaps, but in steady strides. Lily moved some of her belongings into Emma's apartment, her stethoscope hanging on the same hook as Emma's camera bag. The smell of coffee brewing in the mornings blended with the rustle of photographs drying on the line, small domestic details weaving their lives into a fabric that felt permanent. It was Emma who asked first. Not with a speech, not with a carefully planned moment, but one evening as they sat on the couch surrounded by prints scattered across the cushions. She picked up a photograph Lily had taken of her during a walk by the river, one where her laugh had been caught mid-breath, unguarded and real. She stared at it, then looked at Lily. "Do you still have the ring?" she asked quietly. Lily froze. She had almost forgotten the velvet box hidden away in the drawer, the symbol of a heartbreak that had nearly consumed her. She nodded slowly. "Yes." Emma took her hand. "Then let's not waste any more time. This time I'm ready." Tears filled Lily's eyes as she pulled Emma into her arms. No speeches, no rehearsed words, only the raw truth pulsing between them. They had lost so much time already, and neither was willing to lose another second. The months of preparation flew by. Friends offered their homes, families debated details, and Emma fussed over flower arrangements, while Lily cared only about seeing her walk down the aisle. On the morning of the wedding, the air was crisp, sunlight spilling across stained glass windows that painted the floor in hues of ruby and sapphire. The hall was filled with laughter, murmurs, the rustle of silk. Lily stood in her gown, simple but elegant, her dark hair swept back, her heart pounding louder than the organ tuning in the distance. Across the room, Emma adjusted her veil, her hands shaking until her maid of honor stilled them. She looked radiant, the kind of beauty that came not from fabric or jewelry, but from a woman finally free in her own skin. When the doors opened, the room hushed. Emma stepped forward, every movement steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. Lily's breath caught, and for a moment the world blurred around her. She barely heard the officiant's words, barely felt the cool marble beneath her shoes. All she saw was Emma walking toward her, the weight of years carried in each step, until they finally stood together, inches apart, smiling through their tears. The vows were not memorized, not perfect, but they were true. Lily spoke first, her voice trembling yet clear. She told Emma how she had once carried a ring as though it were a burden, how she had nearly let it sink her, but now it had become a gift she could finally give. She promised to love her not as an ideal, but as a flawed, changing, vibrant soul who had taught her patience and courage. Emma followed, her words weaving through the quiet like a melody. She confessed her fear, her mistakes, her year of running, and then she promised never to run again. She said Lily was not her cage, but her compass, not her burden, but her breath. She ended simply, holding her hand tighter, whispering, "This time, it's forever." The rings slid into place, glittering in the morning light, not as symbols of what had been lost, but of everything they had chosen. The officiant pronounced them bound, and the room erupted in applause. But Lily and Emma heard nothing. They leaned into each other, lips meeting in a kiss that carried years of pain and years of longing, now reborn as joy. It was not their first kiss, nor their last, but it was the one that sealed their future. Afterward, as guests mingled and music filled the hall, Lily and Emma slipped outside into the garden. The air was cool, the scent of roses heavy around them, and for a moment they were alone. Emma leaned her head against Lily's shoulder, sighing with relief. "We did it," she whispered. Lily kissed her temple, holding her close. "No," she corrected gently, "we're just beginning." Emma laughed softly, her eyes glimmering. "Then let's never stop." The garden lights glowed as the evening deepened, friends calling them back inside, glasses raised, voices chanting their names. But in that quiet pocket of the world, Lily and Emma lingered, savoring the weight of each other's presence, the certainty that no more goodbyes waited in the shadows. From that day forward, they lived openly, no longer hiding in corners or whispering in shadows. There were challenges, as there always are, but they met them hand in hand, unafraid. And every time Lily caught the sparkle of the ring on Emma's finger, she remembered the night it had once burned in her palm like a wound. Now it glowed like a promise fulfilled, proof that love could stumble, could falter, could nearly break, yet still rise again stronger than before. In the end, their story was not about perfection. It was about choosing each other again and again, even after fear, even after mistakes, even after silence. It was about finding the courage to step back into the fire, knowing it might burn, but also knowing it was the only place they truly belonged. And as the music swelled inside the hall and laughter spilled into the night, Lily took Emma's hand, their rings gleaming side by side, and whispered, "This time, our forever has finally begun." Love doesn't always arrive the way we dream it will. Sometimes it tests us first, breaking us apart, scattering us across time and distance, only to bring us back when we're finally ready. Lily and Emma learned that running from the truth only delayed the inevitable, because the heart never forgets where it belongs. Their story reminds us that the greatest love isn't always the smoothest, but the one that survives storms, silence, and mistakes. It's the kind of love that demands courage, the kind that asks you to stand in the light even when the world is watching. For Lily and Emma, the cafe confrontation could have ended in bitterness, but it became the turning point that set them free. What began in secrecy and pain ended at the altar, two women side by side, not perfect, but stronger for everything they had endured. Their vow was not only to each other, but also to themselves, to live honestly, to never run again, and to keep choosing love every single day. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is She and She, where every chapter proves that love between women is powerful, real, and unforgettable.